Hello out there, and welcome to the No Shit Cast. I'm your host, Matt Frazier. Woo, got a good old bag of shit lined up for us to talk about tonight, literally, figuratively, and every other way. Sitting in the co-pilot seat as usual, none other than the great wizard of historical knowledge himself, Mr. Eric D. Smith. How are you tonight, Mr. Smith?
I'm doing quite well, thank you.
That's good to hear, man. I'm glad. You look well. You look, I don't know, exuberant. That's probably the wrong word.
I felt like I was turning into Orson Welles or something.
What'd be wrong with that exactly?
Oh, like later day drunk Orson Welles.
Oh, is that right? The weird handy cam home movie Orson Welles.
The French.
Yeah.
Champagne.
Sitting in the engineering booth as usual, our own in-house Bond villain, Mr. Devlin. How are you tonight, Mr. Devlin?
I'm doing good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good to hear, man. He's so exuberant, that guy. You know, the kids these days, you know, they just
plugged
emote.
in.
I don't know. They never leave you guessing, do they? Oh, look how short everything's all scrunched up. We got to zoom in a little bit on that. That way it looks like really cool stuff's happening, see?
Waveforms, yeah.
We do this for the fans, man. We do this for the people on YouTube so they can see what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Mr. Devlin and I have been binge watching watched all 3 episodes of The Mandalorian.
Oh, that's right. I've seen that.
Have you had a chance to check it out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we gonna lay out spoilers?
I don't know, Devlin. Should we be talking about spoilers or?
We better warn people; they'll get irate.
Spoiler warning incoming.
Yeah.
There it is.
All right.
There it
spoiler
is. Okay,
warning.
so,
stop listening now
spoilers.
until I give the sign.
Biggest takeaway, immediate takeaway from the series, Baby Yoda.
Are you asking me or?
No, I'm just telling you. That's mine. Yeah.
Baby Yoda.
Yeah. What's?
Of course. Now this takes place right after Return of the Jedi.
As I understand it, yes.
Yeah.
7
So it's
years.
not Yoda, but I think it's not Yoda. It's
No, of course it's not.
Okay.
No, it's a baby version of the same species as Yoda, right? That's kind of what we're all saying, but what species was Yoda, Devlin? Do we know that?
I don't think they ever said, actually.
The fans don't know what Yoda's species is. It's referred to as Yoda's species.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Isn't that nice that there's still some mystery to be solved?
In the series of...
Well, yeah, in Star Wars, like there's still something you can find out that's been there from what seems like the beginning, but nobody knows. They just never addressed it.
So how about you? Baby Yoda or...
What do you mean?
What's your biggest takeaways from it so far?
My biggest takeaway was Western and space.
Yeah, that's it definitely has a Western vibe to it, doesn't it? Even the music and the way they close and open the episodes.
Yeah, and some of the shots and the lighting and the
spaghetti Western style feel.
Absolutely, yeah.
How about you, Mr. Devlin? Biggest takeaways?
I think this is the Star Wars that we all deserve.
Finally?
Yes.
Kind of does. It is. I mean, okay, so my impression is fucking awesome.
Yeah, everybody seems to really like it.
I like it.
I don't know if I'd say I really like it, but I think I like it better than any of the last 3 movies. I was never a hater of the first 3. Like if you're talking like episode 1, 2, and 3, right? Like Phantom Menace and the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith, right?
Right.
Those first 3, I never disliked them or anything, and I liked obviously A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and
Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
right.
But I didn't care much for the last 3.
No?
Not really. No, I mean,
so far, you
fell asleep watching the first 2 at the theater. Maybe I'm just an old man.
Well, we've only had 2. That's the finishing.
Force Awakens
then I guess that's a 100% each time, just about.
Huh?
Well, you said there's only 2, right?
The third one is coming out here real soon.
So
or is out. I'm not sure which. It's one or the other.
There's only 2, then I think I must have fell asleep through both of them or something.
Well, there's been supplemental movies too, right? There was Rogue One
and Solo.
And Solo, both of which I thought were really
excellent.
good,
Yeah.
excellent movies. Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So I don't know.
Yeah. In fact, I think Rogue One is probably my favorite out of all of them.
Really?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love the whole Shakespearean ending where everybody's dying. I love how they play off of a couple of lines in A New Hope where they talk about, do you know how many people died to bring us these plans and things like that? You know, those
they like expanded on that.
Yeah,
that one
like they really showed you
sort of line in the movie.
Yeah,
this whole
loved that, and I loved you know, that they did their best to explain the reasoning behind why there was this event that you could throw a torpedo down that would blow this whole thing up. You know, they backdid it to say, well, it was planned the whole time. This guy planned it and he designed it into the whole design structure, and it was kind of like a hidden feature that he was going to reveal to the rebels, you know. So they did a really good job with the storytelling. They summed it up really good at the end with killing everybody. And of course there was the final and super badass scene with Darth Vader just killing everybody. Like truly being a terror, man. Like showing you what you probably couldn't see in A New Hope, right? Like everybody feared him, but you weren't quite sure why. Because he was a little kind of goopy looking, maybe just mean, right? That's why. And
then he goes and just starts shredding people. Yeah, man, it was mental. Yeah, it was like my favorite scene. It was almost as good as the scene in one of the Avengers movies where the Incredible Hulk takes Loki and just slams him, you know, by
very
his feet.
Satisfying scene.
Oh God, it was like finally, you know.
Yeah, it was great. It was a really good scene.
So that leads me to what I thought would be a fun show question for tonight.
I was sitting here trying to remember if you'd already asked and it had to do with what we were talking about.
Well, it kind of does. It sort of dovetails in. See, I'm thinking this shit through now for a change, huh? I know, it's surprising, isn't it? Yeah. So the question tonight for both of you guys is, who is your favorite superhero or supervillain? You can pick either or, and then obviously, you know, why.
Out of the whole spectrum of superherodom?
Oh, the whole spectrum.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be anything. I mean, you can pick something strange, but it doesn't mean, you know, we'll have a clue what it is. So I'm saying at least within the confines of what would be accepted in the Western sense of a superhero or supervillain.
So I can't pick Gam?
Yeah, who? Devlin, you know who Gam is?
I can look it up.
Look up Space Giants. It's a TV series called Space Giants, and Gam was a character.
Space Giants.
Yeah. But I'm not sure if that would still be my pick. It's a hard thing because there's a lot of really cool super characters, and some of them are very analogous, like Quicksilver and the Flash.
Yeah.
And so they all have character, you know? It's like I would probably say, hey, there's Gam. He's the one in the red shirt with the helmet.
The Space Giants.
Yeah. And it was also called Ambassador Magma, which was another name for it. Go into the image section. I bet you can find a close-up of Gam. Yeah, look at that helmet.
I sort of recognize this now. I can't remember. It was on television then. Yeah. But it was one of them sort of precursors to the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Where they overdubbed it.
Yep. Yeah, this Gam and his mother and father, Silvar and Goldar, they were able to turn into
Silvar and Goldar.
That's right. They were able to turn into airplanes.
Correct. Okay. Yep.
So they would fall down and they would become an airplane, and the human would get in and they'd fly around and do heroic things against that bad guy. But barring that guy, it would be Spider-Man.
Be Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Okay. Spider-Man, I get. I was going to say, of course it has to be some obscure fucking thing because it's you. It's going to be something like that. I do vaguely remember this, though, man.
Yeah.
I do, yeah.
It was cool when I was a kid. It was nothing really like it. It was really bizarre. The only thing like it might have been Doctor Who, right? This was just as hard to get and just as bizarre because it was like a Japanese production.
So it's fun, young people, especially him, have never known a world basically where you couldn't just look something up. So it was real easy to fanboy out on something today and then sort of binge it. we only got exposed to stuff mostly because we're talking about when there's no VCRs, there was no way of recording television.
Yeah,
or video,
you either caught it at the time it was on TV,
or you didn't see it.
Right.
Yeah. It was a big deal. Like, it was planned around, right, for when the Wizard of Oz or whatever would
or
be
just
on
happened
television.
to coincide for a year or two in whatever life you were leading and whatever routine you had at that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just happened to be what was up. But yeah, it was cool, man. I caught that for a couple of years.
I guess I can see how people are nostalgic for that.
I got the whole 3-year series.
No, I mean
no,
I don't mean that. I see that too, but what I'm saying is for that period of time where everything wasn't on demand and there was sort of a schedule and a rhythm to.
Well, when our elders would tell us stuff about their days when they were young and the things that were common, we just ignored it. We had no frame of reference. We couldn't look it up. We couldn't experience it in our own way as younger people. We absolutely were just like, whatever, okay, dude, okay, grandpa. We just go out and do our thing. We totally ignored it. At least today's kids have the choice and the option to look that shit up.
Right.
And they've learned, I think, that if they find the right person that would give them good advice about something, it's actually worth looking up and embracing. Like I've certainly turned on, when I was in college, younger kids to certain types of music and stuff that they didn't know about. And, they valued my opinion, I guess, enough that they checked it out and it became part of what they listened to.
Sure. Right. Yeah, well, you get us old farts maybe have some value.
yeah. Only in a world where information is this accessible, only in the information age are we really this valuable, because it's not like you can just say whatever, right? And there's no way you can articulate these things to these kids because you can't show them. There's no pictures of it. There's nothing that you can do. You can just tell them about it, right? But nowadays, you can get online and you can find out the history of things. You can find out more about that thing than your grandpa's telling you about.
Yeah.
Well,
it also leads to that ability to fact check shit too, and that, which is a good and bad thing, it turns out, in a society.
Yeah, fact check if you know how. A lot of people don't realize that there's a method to research. And they rigorously talk about it and train you in that college.
Look that shit up, right? And what
through
goes
particular
into it,
sources and stuff too.
Yeah,
I mean,
big time.
the sources are the most important thing, right? Anything online that ends up in .org for organization, or to some extent government, depending on how you feel. Yeah, depending on how you feel and what you're looking up or whatever. But those are, and anything that's .edu, especially, like again, depending on how you feel about those liberal bastards,
Right. Well, at least there's a pedigree involved here, right? There's there's tracking and traceability where you can follow things.
At least you can look it up
through their documented sources and check to see if you agree with whatever hypothesis or whatever, theory.
Right, because it's not like these people know anything.
It ain't like my cousin Merle. My cousin Merle, he got the mumps one time from a Ford. I shit you not. Heard this. I kid you not. I had a guy tell us this one time. It was weird. So anyway, I would prefer technical documentation with
just a path that you can trace.
Where I can see, how did you get here? All right, you guys, I got some articles. You want to do articles? Did we follow up with that?
I don't know. Did we do super people for everybody?
We didn't do Devlin's superhero.
Hog that.
You hogged that.
Did
Devlin,
you do any? Did you? What was yours?
Doesn't matter. I asked the questions. Go ahead, Devlin. What do you got? What's the question?
Right, like we've done talking.
Spider-Man.
Question was
It's Spider-Man.
It's Spider-Man.
Yes.
Same thing.
And why?
Why? Because he's the best. And also, I don't know. I can relate to him.
Yes, that's the thing with me. I love that he is such a young kid, man. Like, he's a teenager.
Yeah.
And he's one of the more powerful of the Avengers, right? For his age and his size, he's got a lot of power and muscle, and it's just like the motif of every Spider-Man movie with the big powers come the big responsibility, right? Like, they drag him into a place where a kid his age would never be, because he has to be there because he's got that much power and they need him. They can't just say, no, kid. It's really an asset to have him on your side. So,
right.
But at the same time, they've got to balance that he's a young man, and And a lot of the things that they're fighting about is ideologies and stuff, right? And you're not just asking him to help or pick a side, you're asking him to fight for an ideology to some degree, unless the threat is clear and present. I love Harrison Ford. Anyway,
that's some deep shit, man. I just like the whole web slinging part
that's
of it.
Cool too, man.
I'm like sitting there going, "Fuck! I never thought of Spider-Man this way. Holy shit!"
Yeah,
especially this
man.
new guy that's playing Tom. What's his name?
Tom Holland.
Tom Holland. Yeah. I think he does an excellent job of like you're talking about that the archetypes and presenting that sort of vulnerability and stuff that character would naturally have at
That's
that
why
age.
Tony Stark took such a personal interest in him, because on the one hand, it was such a delicate situation. He really felt compelled to handle it personally.
Right.
This is my view, just my opinion, right, of the movies. He wouldn't just give that to somebody else like he would a normal person or whatever. He felt that responsibility because he was a kid, and he knew that, and he felt bad if anything happened, like really bad.
Oh, yeah, right. If he got him killed or something,
right,
he'd be directly
because he's a kid.
Right.
No matter if he's like can lift the bus and throw it.
No shit. Yeah, I watched this really old movie called The Empire Strikes Back. Remember that scene? And he's... When he's it's Ant-Man got giant, right? And he was tying his legs together.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
fuck you little prick.
And it worked. That's right. Where'd you get this guy?
Yeah. Great movies. Fantastic movies. All right. So Spider-Man. That was his answer. So anybody got anything else, or you want to jump into some articles? Wow, don't everybody jump at once. All right. Let's see here. What can I open it? Okay. So we talk about this a lot when we talk about ancient alien theories that revolve around the idea that human beings were genetically modified to mine gold by aliens for aliens that came to this planet, right? That this is a prevalent theory inside of what? I mean,
as far as the ancient alien theorists go, there's a guy named Zachariah Stitchin who has written 12 or so books, and he is a gentleman who is supposedly able to read cuneiform. There's not many people that can, but he says he can read cuneiform, right? And he's saying that he's reading this on stelae, which are clay tablets that they write.
I've heard
on.
I've heard them called stellas.
Stellas or stellies, yeah.
Okay.
And there's like a reed. They get a reed with an edge, and they will mark in clay, and then they bake it,
and it preserves it. Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what they found, because they can find these and piece these back together and read them, right? And almost, and there's like, say if there's 100 people, there would be like 99 people who read this cuneiform language, right? And they're all in agreement saying, well, these are records being kept of money and trade routes and agreements and things like that. That's important to this city and this government running, right? And everybody's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's probably what I would keep on record if I was running a big city, right? Well, this guy reads them, and he sees a whole different story that unfolds. Essentially, is that aliens come from outer space, and they phase their DNA with primates, probably using CRISPR, and uplift it, the primates, into humans, and then enslave these humans and had them dig for gold, which they needed for
like their warp drive or
something.
Some shit.
Yeah. That's
the theory, right?
That's it, right? Yeah, and then they left. They got what they wanted. They left. I think one or two stayed behind, and they point to Akhenaten, the pharaoh, out in the Amarna period of history, as being one of these beings that stayed behind, because when you look at the artwork in this period called the Amarna period, all of the Egyptians have these elongated heads and stuff, and nobody really knows why, but they say, well, it was like an alien hybrid or something, or whatever, like it was one of the uplifted that had more alien DNA in him and was able to rule over men and stuff. So I guess that's another part of it.
Right. Well, so this has come up multiple times where we talk about this, and we've always sort of taken a bit of a comedic approach, I guess,
Yes.
to the whole thing.
And again, background on that is because gold is not indigenous to the planet. It's not formed inside of the planet like a diamond is.
Right.
Right? It's something that's forged in the heart of a star, and not just any star. It wasn't forged in the heart of our star. Our star is too puny to forge gold. So it was a star that preceded it.
Okay.
A big giant, I think, blue star that forged this, and when it exploded, when it came to the end of its life cycle, it exploded and then supernovaed all this shit out into space, which eventually still
kaboom,
amalgamated into planets at some point. Another reason why they point to planets being formed by amalgamation and
you're talking like an amalgamation?
Yeah, amalgamation.
Like a filling? Like just
a bunch of rocks and stuff coming together and getting more dense and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So, I mean, because this stuff was already out in space before the planet was formed. And so whatever is inside the planet was pulled into the rest of the planet when it formed.
Okay.
So gravity pulled these planets together out of all the dust and stuff that was around in the area around the time that the sun was forming and stuff, like a new generation of a star.
So what we always thought was funny about it, however, was that, and this is where the joke sort of comes in, they come all the way, they can warp space and time, travel from extremely far distances to come all the way across the universe or
and
whatever, the cosmos.
Primates.
Go uplift primates to get them to, because somehow if you've got the technology and the energy and the ability to warp space-time across the galaxy, you can't dig holes in the ground somehow or something. So you uplift these primates.
You're above that sort of work.
Right. You uplift these primates, and then you get them to dig the gold for you. But meanwhile, while you were moving through the cosmos, you passed huge chunks of the shit that you're uplifting primates to do, just floating around in space, basically, right? Where you could just sort of lasso them.
Because gold is indigenous to space, if not to planets.
Right. So when this popped up, I saw this from Nerdist. So the article's from Nerdist. It says 700 quintillion, QUI, quintillion dollar metal asteroid is likely former planet core. So this kind of brings me back to that whole thing with Zachariah Stitchin.
Yeah.
Again, so now this is, I think, worth more than the entire planet Earth.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
The entire gross domestic product of the Earth forever, and it's just sort of bobbing around out there in fucking space somewhere.
Gold is only worth what it is because it's rarity.
Okay.
And you bring that much gold to the planet, it won't be worth anything.
Yeah, it would become so common that, it wouldn't be worth anything.
Yeah. But most of our money is built upon the gold standard. I mean, if that doesn't show you how
because of its scarcity, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not actually, by the way. So before all of the conspiracy theorists and everybody out there start blowing up, the United States monetary system is no longer based on the gold standard.
Good thing.
No, it's yeah. So yeah, I know that was just anyway.
It is good use in electronics because it's dense and it's
does great at transferring heat and energy. Period.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they use it as a shield against cosmic rays and things too, and spacecraft and stuff, and aircraft.
Yeah.
It says, our solar system is just one unthinkably massive gift that keeps on giving, right? The sun protects our planet from interstellar plasma with its solar winds. Jupiter draws in potentially dangerous rogue asteroids, and there's even water on Mars, which we may be able to drink one day. And while that's all obviously awesome, we may soon be privy to a look at one of the solar system's more tangibly valuable gifts. An asteroid made up almost entirely of metals, worth, according to Bloomberg, $700 quintillion.
It's like it got close enough that we were able to estimate it.
Yeah, right. Lloyd's of London or whoever, they come in.
Yeah, it's like
what do you back?
Get away.
You can't use the entire Earth to back up the value of this thing, right?
So, but somehow they're able to estimate it.
It's uninsurable. Asterisk that value, though.
Might kill you if it lands on the planet.
Yeah, it could just go through us like a bullet. It says asterisk that value, though, because we'll mention a couple of caveats, which may or may not be the caveats you're probably thinking of already.
Well, let's see.
I bet it's really far away. Something on Twitter. If you haven't heard of this immensely valuable massive asteroid dubbed 16 Psyche, that's weird. Psyche? 16 Psyche? Psyche? Psyche. Get ready to soon refer to it as my precious. Because my precious. Because its highlight factoids really make it stand out as something special. With an average diameter of 140 miles, or roughly the distance from LA to San Diego, 16 Psyche is one of the 10 most massive asteroids in the solar system. Well, it's close. And an unbelievable 95% of that mass is made up of metals like iron and nickel, as well as possibly gold and platinum. As mentioned, Bloomberg has noted that the asteroid would be worth $700 quintillion.
How do they come up with that?
If it could ever somehow be brought down to Earth, which would mean enough money to give $93 billion to every single person currently on Earth. We would all be loaded. But a Big Mac would be $1 quintillion.
I know, right?
But again, big asterisks on that number. So this is to the point, right, is that it takes far less energy to go get it if you're already in space, if it's in space, than it does to go to a planet that has gravitational gravitational pull, digging heavy ass shit up out of the ground and blasting it back into space if it's already just out there floating around, right? You're like halfway there.
Yeah.
But maybe if they have the ability to fold space-time and all of that and the technology to do all of that, they don't have any kind of sensor that could just pick this shit up, right? Like, I mean, we're picking it up,
sure.
but we must be way more advanced technologically than those aliens.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm sure they know it's out there. Those the ones that came here, you're talking about them?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I have no idea what to say about that.
Well, they're sad, aren't they?
They are.
Look at what they passed.
I know, right?
To come here to make a bunch of monkeys smarter.
Now I'm starting to think that whoever wrote those cuneiform tablets 3,000 years ago was lying.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Or maybe they're being misinterpreted by the one person out of 100 that says they say this one thing. I don't know.
Man, I would never pull into question someone's scientific credibility.
Wouldn't we?
I'm going to take a drink.
Okay. All right, so I guess we can move on from this, right? It's worth a shit ton of money, and it's in our solar system.
Right, yeah, no one's going to bring it down here.
Well, not at 140 fucking miles round.
Yeah, and there's nothing that we can really...
we would have to go up and take it apart, take it in chunks, and even then it would be astronomically cost prohibitive.
Does seem silly putting so much value on gold when it's just floating around like that up
in space.
Yeah.
Well, again, though, it's still very rare because even though it's just floating around out there, go get it.
You know something that's weird?
Make it usable. What's that?
So you know how when we talked about time dilation and how things like time actually runs slower on the surface of the Earth than it does in orbit?
Right, because of how fast you're moving.
Well, because of the mass of the Earth, right?
The
mass of the Earth slows time down. It's true, the faster you're going, it does too, right? But just speaking of the mass of the planet that slows time down, that is a call from God.
What the hell?
Somebody's trying to get through. It's desperate. They're calling and they're saying, look, you got to quit talking about that stuff you're talking about. Stand by. We are experiencing technical difficulties. Podcasting. So what was it? Oh yeah. So anyway, yeah, the larger the mass, the more time and space is warped and the slower clocks go, right? That's the 101 cesium atoms that actually vibrate slower, right?
Okay.
So that means that every planet, even if there was like life and stuff on another planet, you'd have to calibrate your clocks to every planet because every planet's going to be a different size than the next, right? They're all going to have a slightly different size. And that's what determines how slow the clocks go. A slightly larger planet is going to make a clock go slightly slower. A slightly smaller
we're talking
planet,
like super small differences, though,
yeah,
right?
but not over astronomical travels. You'd really need it to be pretty precise if you were using it for that sort of thing. So just something in the future that they'd have to do is they would have, if they really wanted to calibrate their clocks. I mean, we have to do it here for GPS. If we couldn't do it here, you couldn't use GPS very well.
Yep.
So it's a big enough of a difference that if you need it for certain things that you're going to do, like targeting systems of any kind. So you'd actually, before you could target something on a planet from a spaceship, you'd have to make that compensation, that time dilation compensation for the mass of the planet. It'd have to be an equation, and it would be different for every planet because every planet would be a different size.
Yeah, but we just have a computer that does all of that.
Yeah, hopefully.
Wait, it's an app. It's an app that does all that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's just an equation.
Yeah.
And it would be an app or a computer for sure. Yeah, because we can do it. We do it for our clocks. We know what the equation is, and it won't change. It's a universal constant. Yeah.
So cool shit.
Yeah.
All right, next article. Moving on here. I thought this one, again, from Nerdist. See a trend here. 89,000 degree Fahrenheit wall of plasma surrounds our solar system. That sounds like a lot.
It is. It is a lot of temperature. It's not a lot of heat, but it's a lot of temperature. It's not dense enough to be hot, because if it was that hot, it would have fried Voyager when it went through.
Right.
But it didn't. It was able to go through just fine. But the individual atoms themselves that are really spaced out are very excited.
Well, so it says, imagine you're running the faucet above a sink and picture specifically the way the falling water from the faucet continuously splashes outward against the bowl. I guess there's a bowl in the equation, creating a little area where the standing water in the bowl can't invade. It turns out the sun does kind of the same thing as the water falling from the faucet, only instead of flinging water outward, it flings solar wind in every direction. And instead of standing water around it, there's a particle soup made up of interstellar plasma. Yeah, plasma. And while scientists have known about this dynamic for years, they've now discovered, thanks to Voyager 2 space probe, which is what you were talking about, the region around the outer edge of our shield, made up of solar wind, which clashes with the interstellar plasma soup, consists of an 89,000 degree Fahrenheit wall of low density plasma.
Low density is the key.
Okay.
Low density, not hot. High density, very hot.
Okay.
Yep.
So even though the temperatures are astronomically high, there's so little of it that it's not really like burning anything up or anything like that.
No, but the atoms are in that excited of a state as they hit the solar wind.
Yeah, it says it is low density, meaning Voyager 2 can just pass right through it without a problem. Well, that's a freaking misleading headline, man. I thought we were going to find out there was like this boundary that you just couldn't go through. Like, yep, bitches, we're all stuck here.
Yeah, it's like the edge of the universe in Star Trek or the center or whatever. Like
Mars it is.
Right? Yeah, it's kind of cool though. I mean, that's the Healy sheath and the termination shock boundary. The termination shock boundary is like what we thought was the extent of the sun, but now we see there's just this helio sheath.
It says it's extremely low density though, right? So if this wasn't here, if this, what do you call this, helio sheath thingy-majobber, if this wasn't here, it wouldn't really be hurting our planet, right? Our sun would be more likely to blow away our...
No, it wouldn't probably be good.
Oh, no, because we have the magnetic field that blocks a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, see, there's a lot of... If you say this... If the sun was there and it still did everything that it would do, then it wouldn't make too much of a difference because of our magnetic field. But the sun itself was gone, then we wouldn't be orbiting anything and we wouldn't be turning ourselves.
Oh, we'd be dead then. Yeah, we'd be an ice cube real quick.
Yeah. And
about 8 minutes.
And it's also possible that it would still, depending on how strong it is and how much these particles were over time, I think it might eat away at the atmosphere, like a corrosion of the atmosphere. Wouldn't be. I don't think it would be good. Might make cancer grow up too. You know, these are really highly energized particles.
Yeah, most likely, most definitely. Yeah, but like I said, we'd be dead for other reasons long before that ever became a concern, right? Why am I concerned about RNA? We've talked about DNA, but you had brought up something about RNA.
RNA is ribonucleic
telomeres
acid.
or some shit. Is that the same thing?
No, telomeres are on the end of chromosomes, and as you age, they get smaller and smaller.
Right.
Yeah. And some people think that that's connected to longevity, so they study them. But the ribonucleic acid is what forms the deoxyribonucleic acid.
Right.
So the RNA makes the DNA and changes things in and out. RNA is, I think, a simpler structure than DNA. And
why is it important then? I thought it had something to do with aging. What's its where does it sit, or do you know?
Well, it's what pieces like the DNA together from your mom and your dad. In essence, like it puts those two things together, and if you didn't have it, you wouldn't. I don't know if life would exist without it.
Oh, so it's important. It's like a building block or connecting thing.
Yeah. And it says if it comes out of a meteor, that's well. Go ahead.
Well, it says the discovery of ribose sugar, ribose sugar in ancient meteorites just made space rocks a little sweeter. So life could literally have come from meteorite, or one of the essential building blocks of life.
Panspermia.
Panspermia.
Yeah, panspermia, a life coming from outer space on asteroids, providing water and carbon chains and stuff. There's like carbon chains in outer space and stuff.
So a pair of 4.5 billion year old meteorites were shown to contain ribose sugar, the key component of RNA. Researchers think this could be proof that RNA was the top dog genetic molecule on early Earth.
Before DNA, yeah.
New studies suggest that when some ancient meteorites crash land on Earth, they bring a dash of extraterrestrial sugar with them. I love that extraterrestrial sugar. To be clear, this is not table sugar. Aw. Sadly, scientists still have no insight into whether aliens prefer their coffee black or sweetened.
And this will be the only attempt of humor in this article.
Rather, in the powdered samples of two ancient carbon-filled meteorites, astronomers have found traces of several sugars that are key to life, including ribose, the sugary base of RNA, ribonucleic acid.
Woo!
According to lead study author Yoshiro Furukawa,
I like it.
I'm going with that. This is the first time that these bioessential sugars have been detected in meteorites. The find gives fresh fuel to the idea that the essential building blocks of life on Earth were forged in space before crash landing on our young planet billions of years ago, Furukawa said. So that goes back to that whole paradox, right? That life is persistent. Because it looks like you said panspermia. It looks like it's just being blasted into the universe in a sense.
Yeah, it just needs to be in the right conditions to bloom, so to speak.
Waiting for a habitable landing zone.
Yeah, someplace wet.
And warm.
Yeah, one of the things
what are we talking about again?
Well, it's all given life.
Anyways.
Yeah. I read somewhere once or seen somewhere once that they thought that the double helix formed because it was in water, that it couldn't have formed outside of water, and that the natural motion of the Earth is what eventually caused this to happen.
Okay.
So that...
tides and shit like that.
And the spinning and just the gravitational and how water
sort of had a way of making everything entangle in a
tides and stuff.
Way.
The moon and how tides come in. And
that would be very
and,
pagan. It'd be a very pagan sort of. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, it would be. Yeah, it'd be kind of neat.
I mean, it would. I don't know. I shouldn't speak for everybody pagan. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, but doesn't that seem like that would line up with sort of their...
Well, yeah. The rhythm and cycles of the equinoxes. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And all that stuff, right.
Because RNA, as they just pointed out, precedes DNA, right? But DNA is what gives rise to evolution. Without DNA, you couldn't have evolved into what we were and stuff. So, if you find that right rocking and slushing around, you'll build a complex form that will be able to replicate.
Yeah, because it's like weirdly tying knots over and over and over again until the right ones get tied, kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah.
That's that Shakespearean. If you put enough monkeys in a room, they'll
type out Shakespeare.
Type out the entire works of William Shakespeare.
But like you pointed out, when the whole universe is full of life components and they just need to be kind of mixed together in a basic way, and life will potentially form. life persists and stuff, like it makes sense, right? If that's all out there, it just needs the right conditions and motion to bring it into some kind of structure that will eventually self-replicate. I make it sound like, it's life, man. Yeah,
well, I tell you, that's a lot less impressive than,
a cosmic being
that
some dictates things into existence.
You just say, well, it's just sort of persistent, and it's just sort of always been there, and I don't know what to tell you.
And if the temperature's right and the time is right, you'll bake a cake with it. It's awesome.
But that's hard to, you can't build a statue with that. Make rule books around. I guess you could.
Well, there's always people who, in a religious sense, will pull back from that picture and say that is what God did. He did make that plan of having a universe full of life where it could be anywhere. It was his hand that made the universe full of life, and this is what he's ordained, and still make him the creator. It's just on a larger scale.
Like Bruno's God.
Yeah, the more we find out about science, the more God actually kind of takes a big grander scale.
Isn't that right?
Yeah, like the great architect, of everything, like you said in the past.
Yeah, like the concept of a grand architect.
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable with that sort of idea, but I don't know that thing gives a rat's ass about me personally or anything I wish that it would do.
No, but once we've seen how big the scale of all of this is, you can see that regardless of all of it, between God and the scale, we're all insignificant. The universe can fall over us and kill us. I mean,
not even give it a second.
Even
thought.
though God cares, the universe doesn't care.
It doesn't seem to. Yeah. It'll spend millions of years We've talked about this. Spend millions of years developing life on a planet, and then just fucking hit it with a rock. Bam. Yeah. Everything dead. Start over.
Well, at the same time, it will keep producing the same species and flooding an island and making the same species and flooding an island.
Poor birds.
Yeah.
we love those birds. It's gonna be like Devlin. We should figure out how to incorporate those birds into a mascot of some sort.
Dead Bird Productions.
Dead bird.
What birds?
There's these birds that we did this on the show once. We're gonna do it again about these birds. This is where there's an island that it takes it a long time, but every so many thousand years it floods. This island basically disappears.
And on it is flightless birds. So when the island floods, it kills the birds.
They all end up dying. They all end up basically drowning on this island. But here's the interesting part. Well, then another 1,000 years, the waters start to recede again, and then this bird that can fly will fly back to this island, and then eventually will get so comfortable on this island that it won't fly anywhere else, and then it gets so comfortable on this island that it loses its ability to fly because all of its food's on the ground and there's no natural predators. So then they continue to evolve until they can't fly anymore, and then the cycle starts all over again.
The island floods and they all die.
And it kills them all again.
And archaeologists have dug through several layers of dead flight birds, then a huge layer of dead flightless birds, then some dead flight birds, then a huge layer of dead flightless birds.
And they can see the evolution through the record of cutting through the layers of how these birds are literally like evolving themselves to a point where they can't escape, and then they drown. Yeah, then they all die because the island floods
again. Life is good until it's done.
I don't you know what? I bet they don't die as in they drown. I bet they get long before that, all the insects and stuff they're eating. Yeah, and then they start starving to death. It's probably miserable.
Yeah, it's not probably good. But the funny thing is, they find them all in one layer. Like it's like a mass death overall in a time period. Like comparatively.
So that's what we're talking about. That bird.
Dead Bird Productions.
Dead bird. Other important building blocks of life have been found in meteorites previously, including amino acids, components of proteins, and nucleobases, components of DNA and RNA.
Look at that. DNA and RNA just hanging out in space. In rocks that may or may not have been part of planets or may become part of planets or crash into our planet, become part of our planet.
Hit our giant ocean water-covered planet and land right in this amazing, hospitable environment.
With parts of DNA and RNA.
Yep.
Right, that just need to be kind of shook together and put together, and there you could have life again. You could have another human species evolve, maybe.
So basically, everything you need, all the spark plugs you need for life, have already been detected
in outer space.
and in meteorites that are coming through our atmosphere, and this shit's surviving.
Yeah, not all in one place, but certainly we've discovered water, and we've discovered parts of DNA and RNA and carbon chains and nucleobases and amino acids, and places that have that are in the Goldilocks zone and have a yellow sun. I mean, everything we have, we've pretty much found at least somewhere else in the universe, if not all in one place.
So, like the whole idea that Superman could only come here because of our yellow sun.
No, there's a lot of those.
There's a lot of those out there.
Yeah,
right?
I think they're pretty average, actually.
Again, doesn't make us really that exceptional anymore, does it?
No.
The cosmic sense. All right, guys. Last week I shit all over futurism, so let's see if they redeem themselves this week, right?
They're getting their next trial here.
Getting another shot here. I guess either way, it's topical, right?
I think the subject matter is pretty interesting.
Devlin loved this one. Computer scientists say ghosts could be sign universe is simulated. I'm making that up. I don't know whether we really cared about this one or not.
I like talking about ghosts, but this will kind of ruin it for me, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because you want to believe in the ghosts that are like
the spirit,
disembodied spirits.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got me watching this YouTube show. God, what is it called, Devlin? With
BuzzFeed Unsolved.
These two guys are like ghost hunters. One's a skeptic and the other's sort of a believer.
Parapsychologists?
Yeah. Well, no. Are they? They're not really. Would you consider them to be parapsychologists, Devlin, or sort of more adventure seekers?
They're adventurous.
Oh, they're the Indiana
Well,
Jones of parapsychologists.
They're hilarious because the skeptic is always doing stuff that freaks the other guy out.
I'll show you after the show.
Yeah, it's pretty funny stuff. And then watching these guys scream and this guy scream and freak out about stuff. Anyway, sorry. So what are those guys' names, Devlin?
Ryan and Shane.
Yeah, it's really funny. I would have never found it. Like I said, he's always showing me this shit. So, simulation theory, the hypothesis that we're just avatars in a simulated universe, has a new advocate. This is from Futurism. We already said that. Speaking at a film festival, University of North Carolina at Wilmington, computer scientist Curry Gwynn again suggested that our world isn't real, according to WRAL TechWire. Though Ginn admitted that it was a fairly speculative idea, so he's accepting that it's a wild ass guess.
Could be.
Yeah, could be. He went on to argue that reports of ghosts, deja vu, and weird coincidences could actually be glitches.
Glitches in the Matrix.
And evidence that we're all trapped in some futuristic society's video game or science experiment. I actually like this theory. Remember I said I think when we see things like UFOs and supernatural phenomena or whatever, the rare times that we see it.
Yeah, glitches in the Matrix.
I think it's like the simulation's leaking memory or something, we're seeing through stuff. Again, pointed out Elon Musk's belief in simulation theory to lend more authority to the idea. He also suggested we could build our own simulations in the future, TechWire reports, and he suspects that video game developers will lead the way. I think we're kind of already doing that with this Oculus Rift stuff and these virtual reality headsets. No, wouldn't you guys argue?
I think it's good. Yeah, that's.
This sounds kind of like the episode of Rick and Morty where Rick has like this little planet in a box, like the solar system,
and it's a battery.
Yeah, it's a battery.
It's the battery for his spaceship, for his car. Yeah.
And then he goes in and he finds out that place has a box just like his. That's a battery.
Yeah. And it's another species that think that he's God or think that they're God. And yeah, it just keeps going through this whole cycle of deeper and deeper into.
I've never seen that show.
Rick and Morty?
Yeah.
I think you'd like it.
Yeah, I think you'd love
it.
They
made
man.
a Dungeons and Dragons Rick and Morty.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a cult phenomenon. Not a cult, but, it has a strong following. I haven't seen a bad episode yet. You'd like it, I think.
So when Leonard Susskind and Stephen Hawking and Kip Thorne were having their black hole wars, and Susskind came up with the idea that ended up having him be the acknowledged winner, right?
Right.
In the end. And the bet was a year
subscription to Playboy magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you watch, there's a show about Stephen Hawking where they show him getting that, but Susskind ended up winning it, but it was like after they thought that Stephen Hawking did with Hawking radiation. But what ended up happening was that he said that there was no boundary that you could really pass through in a black hole at the event horizon, which is generally described as the point at which light passes and won't escape. But he says it's not a boundary that you're going to pass through. That what it is that, just like we talk about with the mass of the Earth, you making things slower, time slower.
Yeah, the mass of this is so much higher in a much smaller area. That it actually stops
time, and that when mass comes into this object, it gets shredded through an accretion disk before it gets stored two-dimensionally on the surface of this area of time that's stopped. Right.
Right.
So he did the math that showed that anything three-dimensional could be represented in a two-dimensional sense and not lose any of its information.
Right.
That in a sense, 3 dimensions was a projection, and it was an unnecessary projection, but there it was. The spaces between atoms are so vast.
How dare he say to the universe, "You're unnecessary."
I mean, the space between atoms are so vast that if it wasn't for the strong force between them, your hand would pass through the table.
Yeah.
So, in essence, we are a hologram surrounded by a force field that keeps us solidly from going through things like walls and stuff. Our natural state without that force.
Well, that's why that dude that the
would be a hologram.
That guy, that general kept trying to run through walls.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because he thought if he set his energy just right,
he
could run through walls. Didn't work out for him.
No,
like
because
Harry
of that
Potter.
Force.
What's that?
Like Harry Potter.
Like Harry Potter, right?
Yeah.
And 9 3/4 or whatever.
Not that I've seen
platform,
it, but
9 3/4. Someday, Mr. Smith, we're going to take a snow day from school. We're going to sit around.
Yes, and
we're
watch
going to eat
Aliens
cereal out of the box.
and watch
all the Harry Potters.
So all of these ideas. I'm sorry. I know.
No, you're fine. I'm listening. Go ahead.
All of these ideas of us living in a simulation stem from his math. And that there, it shows that they've taken it and they've extrapolated it, right? But it was never necessarily intended for that. It was just something that he kind of found out mathematically, and now people are really using that to prove and show that we live in a simulation, right? So I'm always a little skeptical about ideas that are extrapolations from somebody's math that they did for a specific thing. Same thing with Alan Guth and his inflation calculations, where to get a homogeneous universe, he had to put in inflation into the mathematics of the Big Bang to make it work out to the observations that we see. And in that period of inflation is a time when everything traveled faster than the speed of light. It would be the only time that it ever happened in the universe, and it just turns on and turns off in that overall theory. So it's like a huge kind of a flaw. And it's like, I don't want to base the Big Bang Theory on that, because that seems like Einstein putting in the cosmological constant.
Right.
And that's kind of what these simulation theories sometimes seem like to me, is that they seem like they're extrapolations of somebody else's math. But it's possible that it's true.
Well, he did win the subscription to Playboy magazine.
In the end, yeah. And so I mean,
which is two-dimensional information. Let's be honest.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, it could be. So then, let's take a deeper philosophical question about the situation. Then,
okay,
to both of you, if you believed or thought that it was likely that we lived in a simulation, who do you think would be on the other end? Would it be God, aliens, or computer?
I think it's us
in the future, or
I think I mean, because God, we always create our gods, or whatever, the deities always seem to be created in the image of men, of people, of humans. So I would think that if we created something, given that we think that God looks like us and is us, an embodiment of us, that we would turn around and do the exact same thing to something that we created. And I think we see that we anthropomorphize robots and stuff already. We're trying to make them walk and do all the things that a biped does, or an upright standing human does, right?
So these are humans that would be more technologically advanced than us?
Yeah, of some sort, right.
I would, and I still want to hear what Devlin says about this, but it also made me think of this. What if it literally was us? What if we were so technologically advanced that we were able to make a machine that really didn't need to be maintained, and it was able to keep us in this illusion, and then we slowly forgot the technology, the few people that knew, until we realized that didn't realize we were living in a simulation. We forgot and kind of had to start all over again, and that someday we'll realize it's a simulation and be able to reclaim that heritage again. Wouldn't that be strange?
Well, there's that whole, right, that collective consciousness kind of thought, right, where they talk about how everybody's part of the same sort of consciousness, but every human being is a for instance of that collective right now.
Yeah.
Which its purpose is to just sort of experience life.
Kind of like we talked about with the Orc-OR and coming back several times. Yeah. One entity, several different manifestations.
Don't you think that interestingly enough, inside that theory of Orc-OR, this sort of simulation theory is a nice, neat little box that sort of fits in with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So maybe it's not a question of which it is. It's maybe it's a function of both, or it's somewhere in the middle kind of thing.
What do you think, Devlin?
I think it's a version of us, like what Dad's saying.
Yeah.
But they look different. Like they take what they think a perfect version of their species, like say it's still humanity, and then it became us. Like their video game designers coming up with a different race for an MMO.
Okay, so from the standpoint of an MMORPG, or even like the games that Devil and I like to play, like Overwatch,
just somebody's simulation.
Those characters are human-like and very much so, but they're also very cartoonish.
Yeah.
So,
but stylized ideas of what we might want to be.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that what Devlin's getting at is that we would be the same version of that. They may not look exactly like us, but they're going to look close.
Yeah.
But what they think is cute and interesting is what we are. And then, because that's kind of exactly what we're doing now with the worlds that we create in these MMORPGs. World of Warcraft's another one where the characters were definitely humanoid, but were very cartoonish in the way that they present, right? Go ahead.
I was just thinking about, have you seen the music video for Daft Punk's Better, Faster, Stronger?
Yes.
Yeah, where the aliens are turning more human.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like that.
Gotcha. Well, there's a book by Roger Zelazny, one of my favorite authors, called Lord of Light. Weirdly enough, the CIA used the script that they made out of that book to rescue hostages in Iran in the 70s. But aside from that weirdness, the book itself was about these really advanced species of people that were, this is a group of 12 or 13 or so people, and they went to a planet that had primitive life on it, and they set themselves up as the gods, but they took on the forms of the Indian mythos with Kali and all of those type of deities, and they would use their technology to change their bodies and appearance and science to do their magic, and they ruled these people. And anytime the species would start to advance in some major way, they would kill off that technology and anybody involved with it to keep them retarded in terms of technology, because that way their spirituality and the belief in things would still be pure, so that nobody would ever suspect the gods of being just like normal people or space travelers.
Right, or that they were somehow in a
enslaved,
test.
A test, or being enslaved, And the book is about one of the people that rebelled, and he was trying to bind the gods to set the people free, and in a lot of cases they didn't even realize, because they were devoted to the gods.
Right.
But every so often in the book, somebody would invent something like the printing press, those people would be snuffed out.
Like real quick,
Yeah.
huh? Yeah. No, you won't be sharing ideas and information. None of that shit.
You get your information directly from the gods.
So I'm going to guess podcast would be a hell no.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, big time, huh?
Yeah.
We're the rebels of that world.
We are, huh?
Yeah, we are.
We like to think we are. I think we're the self-stylized rebels of that world. Everybody's tough on the internet, right?
I'm twice as tough.
All right, guys, that's an hour. Anybody got anything else you want to add? I think it's a good spot. We can wrap up there tonight. Got the holiday coming up, so I'm going to try to bang another show out here in the next couple days. That'll be fun.
Yeah, maybe a Thanksgiving show, you said?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. We'll be like,
Yeah.
oh
my God.
I'm ready to do the show. We'll just be kind of lounging. I'll be in my sweatpants with
Right?
all folded over. All right, if nobody's got anything else, we'll just wrap up there, man. It's a good show. And like I said, we'll be back in a couple days, it looks like. No problem. So check us out, www.noshitcast.com. It's KNOWSHITCAST.com. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. If you want to see what we do, make sure you can go over and check us out on YouTube. And the same thing there. Subscribe to the channel. That way you get all the latest updates and all of that fun shit. So thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch y'all next time. Bye, sickles.